We're real excited to kick this off, and I think you're going to enjoy learning about this as much as I do. And along the way, we're going to learn a ton, and it's going to be really fun watching how fast this happens, the choices retailers and brands make, and the best practices that develop over time. You're not alone on this journey. We'll be there with you all along.
Welcome to the Retailgentic Podcast, where we explore the intersection of retail, e-commerce, and AI agents, which we call Retailgentic. Our mission is simple. We are shining a bright light on the new agentic AI shopping megatrend, which will disrupt the trillion-dollar digital retail market. The stakes are high. Google, OpenAI, Microsoft, Perplexity, Amazon, Apple, Meta, and Anthropic are all fighting to be the consumer AI shopping agent winner. There are going to be some tough decisions for online brands and retailers to make. What happens to checkout? How should payments work? Should you continue to invest in retail media networks? What does the world look like when over half of your traffic is not from humans, but from AI agents? These existential questions are the tip of the iceberg. On this podcast, we're talking to industry experts, analysts, and influencers to get answers to these questions, identify trends, and best practices. This is Retailgentic, your podcast partner in navigating our AI shopping agent future. And now here's your host, Scot Wingo.
Hello, and welcome to the first episode of Retailgentic Podcast. I'm your host, Scot Wingo. This is what I like to call a foundational podcast. As we go through this podcast over the coming weeks, months, and years, there's some foundational concepts that I'll refer back to, and this podcast lays those down. This way, I don't have to say them each time, and you don't have to get tired of hearing them. I'll just say, back on the foundational podcast. So a little bit about me. I'm a serial founder here in the Raleigh-Durham Triangle area called the Research Triangle Park, and I'm on my fifth startup. The startup most of you probably know me for is called ChannelAdvisor. I started ChannelAdvisor in 2001, and we had this idea that marketplaces would be a big thing. And the first marketplace was really an auction site called eBay. So we started in 2001, and it took 7 years for the next marketplace to show up. And that was, thank goodness, that was Amazon. So it was a good one. And today, we all know marketplaces are a huge thing. Every retailer's adding them or has added them. There's companies like Miracle that are enabling this trend. So retail media networks are layered on top, etc. So that took quite a while. You know, I'm sitting here 24 years later, and it was a good prediction, but it took a while. We took ChannelAdvisor public 2013. Then in 2015, I moved to the board, still stayed involved until it was sold to Commerce Hub in 2022, and started a company called Spiffy, which was exploring the intersection of e-commerce and digital services. Then, so I've been doing that for 10 years, and then decided in the fourth quarter of 2024 that AI was going to be such a big change that I had, as an entrepreneur, I would regret missing out on that. So did some soul searching and learning, and came up with the idea that is RefiBuy. Also, one of my passion projects is I'm very active in our entrepreneurial community here in the Triangle, helping other founders. And I've started a whole bunch of things under this banner of Tweener. A Tweener is a Triangle company, just like we use for kids that are kind of in that awkward, adolescent, not quite a teenager yet phase. We call them Tweeners. The companies get into that phase as well. So we track those and invest in them and do all kinds of things under this Triangle Tweener brand. So if you see me post about that on LinkedIn, that's what that's all about. So decided to start this podcast because as I got up to speed on AI, the various things like retrieval augmented generation and some of these, and when I say AI, I mean, for me, AI starts at ChatGPT in 2022. So, I found that no one was really focusing on this intersection of AI and e-commerce. Sure, we cover it on a bunch of other podcasts, but I think specifically one area of that is going to be as big, if not bigger, than marketplaces, and that is this agentic or these agents. So our goal here is to shine a bright spotlight on this trend, help retailers and brands navigate and learn, come up to speed on this, because I do think it's going to be very important for everybody. This is going to create this AI curve that we're on is faster than anything we've ever been on. And it's going to happen on a logarithmic scale, which many humans aren't really prepared for, and most businesses aren't prepared for. And this presents both a strategic risk. So I do think this is going to be an existential risk, just like Amazon / marketplaces has been for a lot of retailers. Some of us didn't make it to the other side of that. Rip to Borders and J.C. Penney and all the folks there that did not make it. Circuit City is a classic. But I do think it's an opportunity as well. So what we learned from that big wave of marketplaces is the folks that embraced it and rode the wave tended to do better than those that fought it. So our job here on the podcast is to have conversations pretty specifically about this area. We're not going to be doing Amazon earnings or any of those types of things. And just so that we can surface what's going on so that you have the most information at your fingertips as you navigate this complex changing world that we're about to enter. We have 3 ways you can consume our content. The first one is we have a Substack, and this is basically a subscription newsletter. It's free. It will never be paid. And it's at retailgentic.ai. So go sign up for that if you have not. And it's long form content that we put out. And so it kind of has several flavors. There's news. So if something breaking happens, that's the first place you'll find out about that. And then a lot of times we are building these longer form content than you'll be able to do on a podcast. So maybe an interesting idea or a best practice comes up on a podcast. You'll see more of that reflected over on the Substack. Then unlike the Jason and Scott show, which when we started that, it was much more common to do audio only. We have an audio and video component to this podcast. So the video lives on YouTube, and there'll be some clips on Instagram and TikTok, but the primary channel is YouTube. So you can go subscribe to that. If you go youtube.com/@retailgentic, that will subscribe you there. And then we also have an audio pod, which is available through all your normal audio readers, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, so on. So some of the thematic areas that we'll keep poking away at as we learn more about this is I do think if I play out in my mind this prediction that many, many consumers will be using these AI shopping bots or agentic commerce, whatever we want to call it, it's going to create some really interesting friction points for retailers and brands to think about. The number one at the very tippy top is, should you embrace this or should you block it? Right now, there's kind of a really good example is Walmart and Amazon. Amazon is blocking this. So they have blocked any of the agents out there except for Perplexity. It seems like Perplexity, I think Bezos is an investor there, and there does seem to be some affinity with Perplexity. And then or do you embrace it? There was a Wall Street Journal article at Walmart had out where they basically say, we're going to embrace agents. We welcome them, and we want to figure out, how do we talk to you? What's the agent to agent protocols? How do we get you our product catalog? That kind of thing. So that's going to be interesting. So that's the first that's almost theology at that level, right? As a company, you need to start thinking about this. What is your theology on this issue? The second one is this a new channel that's forming like a marketplace? Is this an opportunity, or is it risk? Is this something coming between you and the customer that will make you basically just a fulfillment center for whatever engine up top, for OpenAI or something like that? So those are the kind of like the first and second order issues that I think we're going to face as an industry. Now, these are like what I would call third order things. So this is where we're going to get into the nuances. And this is from, again, 20 years in marketplaces where everyone kind of went through the same thinking. And ultimately, the folks that embraced and treated it like a new channel ended up, quote unquote, winning or having an edge. And sometimes when you're the first in here, you're getting the fastest learnings, and a lot of them are sustainable for a long period of time. So imagine you're one of the first people that understands the Amazon buy box and how that works, and FBA and how that works. You had a huge advantage. And then when the ads came out, you understood all that. We found at ChannelAdvisor, those customers were taking share on this new opportunity versus the others that were losing share. I'm not really advocating for that. Just that's what I witnessed with marketplaces. Again, it's kind of up to every individual brand and retailer to decide where they fall on this and what their their company is going to do. So some of these third order things that I think are interesting is if you imagine a day where the user has this kind of digital agent shopping for them, now it's going to be trickier for you to do some of the things you did direct, and perhaps you're going to have those relationships with the agent. So maybe you'll have to have an agent on your side that advocates for you and talks or negotiates with the consumer's agent. So these are some things like pricing strategies. Imagine an agent comes to your website and you say to it, "Hey, can you tell me about your user? I'd really like to know their name and email." And it says, my user prefers to be anonymous." They could say, "Okay, I get it. And we do that today, right? Guest checkout." But what if you said, "Well, tell me, is it their first time to our web to our have they ever transacted with us before?" And maybe they'll say, "Oh, sure, yeah, they have." And you could say, "Well, what's their loyalty number?" And maybe the agent then goes back to the user and says, "Hey, or give me their loyalty number and I'll give you some better pricing," type of a thing. So there's gonna be like this kind of information exchange. I think that's gonna be really fascinating to see on this third order level. The personalization, I think this is where the big battle is going to be, because the agentic layer is going to have a better chance at winning personalization. Because I'll use a pet example. Let's say I'm a value shopper and I just want to save $10 on my dog food because it's crazy expensive. My dog's dog food is $60. So I am less loyal to Chewy, Petco, and PetSmart, and I want the agent to just kind of find me the best price for that day. So therefore, I want the agent to know my dog and its type of dog and its name and that type. I want it to have the personalization, but I don't really care if Chewy, Petco, PetSmart have that information. So that's going to be interesting to see what happens. Sizing information. If my agent knows my sizing information, then I don't constantly have to enter it at every website. There's going to be some interesting things around fit, right? So there's all these companies out there that do all this. How does apparel fit? What's the sizing? I think a lot of that is going to start to be pulled up into the agentic layer. What's this mean for loyalty programs? I actually think I'll be contrarian here because I just kind of painted a picture where they die. I think they're going to become even more important. So, but it's going to be, you're not going to be talking to a consumer. You're going to be talking to their representative, basically. It's going to be a really interesting new way of dealing with things. It comes into coming from the auction world. This is interesting because we had these scenarios where there's these bidding agents that exist, kind of like request for quotes, and B2B is largely consumed through this kind of a mechanism. And I think a lot of those same things are going to come over to the consumer world for the first time. So let's say you do decide that theologically you're going to embrace these channels. If you do, just like we did in the marketplace world, there was different strategies for eBay, Amazon, Walmart, Target. Every one of these engines, these channels, has a different optimization path and scheme and tactics and strategies you use. We're going to be surfacing those, and this is the most interesting area because it's changing so incredibly rapidly. But I do think that if you understand this, it will give you a big edge. Imagine today someone goes to OpenAI and ChatGPT and they start looking. I had this experience. I started looking for a specific toaster. My toaster died, and it was very useful. If we think about the shopping journey of research, find, and buy, that's where my new company's name comes from. At the research phase, it was incredible, right? So the only thing that came close to it was kind of like Amazon, but I would score an Amazon a 1 out of 10. And using an LLM in that research phase is amazing because I got to an answer way quicker than I can on any retailer site. But then it kind of fell over because I then, so in the research phase, it was an A plus. This is before they launched their new shopping thing, but even the new shopping thing's not that great yet. And then when it came to find, then it kind of stubbed its toe because it wasn't really good at this combination of, as a buyer, I want to think through a multi-dimensional problem of when do I want it? How fast do I get it? I'm an Amazon Prime user. I'm a Walmart Plus user. That's a factor. Maybe for a large consideration purpose, I want to use a buy now, pay later payment mechanism. Maybe I need this toaster. Maybe I'm having a toaster emergency and I need to get this thing through Instacart or one of the delivery mechanisms today. Today, they're not really good at what I would call that find to buy cycle, where there's a lot of consumer preferences that come into play, and really understanding all the attributes of availability become essential to being able to nail that. So one of the frameworks we'll talk a lot about is we are going to track the actual companies that are participating in this space very closely. So here we have the three states, if you will. So we've got launched, announced, and predicted. So the companies that have launched AI shopping agents, and my definition of an AI shopping agent is it helps the consumer buy across multiple sites. So a lot of people would say Rufus is an AI shopping agent. Yes, it is, but it's not a general one. It only works on Amazon. So to me, that doesn't really count. It doesn't let you shop off of Amazon. To me, that's just basically an on-site chat or a very specific agent within a site. So it's not the general purpose one. So this definition stuff is going to be important as this category grows. The one that's been out the longest is Perplexity, and they seem to be investing the most in this area. If you're not familiar with Perplexity, it's a Silicon Valley startup that was the first one to have this idea of the intersection of generative AI or LLMs and search engines. So they were able to get a search index as a retrieval augmented generation and have a general AI and really show that you could have an answer engine, a better way of Googling, if you will, of searching. Google search gives you 10 blue links to go explore on your own. This gives you the answer. So it's way more efficient. And if you haven't tried Perplexity, I strongly recommend it. As part of that, they saw early data. This is me guessing, and I have some indications of why. I'll show you in a second. And that led them to really lean in on products and shopping. So they have a very good shopping agent. They have a paid version called Pro, and then within there, they have Buy with Pro. We have a complete write up on Retailgentic. I won't go through that, but it's very good. And its problem is coverage. There's Shopify stores and a couple other places where you can actually buy up at the top level in the agent. Otherwise, you're having to go to it's more of a discovery platform or a comparison shopping engine type thing. Then there was so that was in the fourth quarter of 2024. This came out before the holiday season. And then there was a bit of a drought. And then this year, Amazon shocked everyone, certainly me. I thought they were going to be one of the last people to do this because, again, they have this closed metaphor. They're not going to let anything come into the top of Amazon. But what's interesting is they do want you to be at Amazon and shop at other sites. So this is called Buy for Me. And again, I have a whole write-up of this on Retailgentic if you want to see it in action. But this is more for manufacturers or brands that are currently not on Amazon. So you'll actually see this, this as you go through a product listing, there'll be a call out that says, this is not available on Amazon, but it's available on the third party site. You can actually go through and buy the product, and Amazon is very clear. It says we have an agent that's going to go buy this for you. Do you really want to do it? And it walks through a 4-step process and goes and buys a product on a different website for you. Now today, it's only limited to those sites that take Amazon Pay, which is like sub 10%, I would estimate. So its efficacy isn't really huge, but a lot of these things start that way. And they're going to add more functionality. Just because something starts with a limitation doesn't mean that limitation has to be there. They can add functionality to this. This is not a great name, but it's called ChatGPT Shopping. These are little product cards. So back in my toaster example, when I was shopping for a toaster, it would just give you some text about toasters and say, you should look for a Breville ABC123. But now they actually have product cards in there. And these are like little, teeny tiny PDPs where you can go and see a bit about the product and understand what's going on. But from there, you just leap off. So it's really just the research phase. So this one's really kind of launched-ish. So there's actually a nuance here. It's exciting they have put a toe in the water here, but I do think they have a lot of room to go. There's no actually agentic purchasing going on. It's just the research kind of bucket. Same thing for Microsoft. They've announced a merchant center, so you can upload a feed to them, and they actually do now just have product cards available. This just happened, so they're kind of in this kind of launch phase 1, I guess I should call it. Gemini just announced theirs at Google I/O literally last week, so that was exciting, and it's interestingly called Buy for Me as well. So there's going to be a little bit of a fight over that name, I think. You can't have both Google and Amazon using Buy for Me, and so it felt a little derivative because of that. But I think knowing Googlers, they live in such a tiny bubble, they had probably no idea Amazon even had anything out there. I'll give them the benefit of the doubt on that. This one is pretty good. I think it's an A plus. It has two weird aspects to it. Number one, the user flow is such, and this isn't live, so I'm going off of 3 demos that they gave, and every one of these demos had these same flaws. Flaw number one, it only works with Google Pay on the back end. So that's, again, just like Amazon Pay, Google Pay is not one of the most widely accepted payment mechanisms out there. So it's going to be hard for them to get much implementation, much coverage. The other weird thing is the workflow is you go in, you find a product, and then you have to track it using pricing and set a target, and then it has to hit that target for you then to enter the buy for me flow. It's very strange. There's no just like, I discovered a product, I want my agent to go buy it for me now. I don't understand that, and hopefully that was just a hangover or some weird thing due to the demo, or they had to get this out quickly, something like that. I do predict that we're going to see Apple come out with something. They'll probably be one of the last people. They do not have religion around Gen AI. They're very far behind. They do have WWDC coming up this summer, so that if there is going to be something announced this year, that's when it'll be. I'll give that like a 5% probability. The most probable two we'll see come out this year before holiday. We're going to see everyone enhance what they have that are already on the board. But I think you're going to see Anthropic, their system's called Claude. I'll just call it Claude to avoid having to say both brands. Claude has like trailed OpenAI by about 3 months. OpenAI came out with web search. Claude 3 months later did. Where Claude's innovating is on Agentic. So they've come out with a lot of these this protocol for communication with agents called MCP. They came out with some of the first papers. They were very influential on my starting my company because of some of the things they wrote that kind of like helped me see into the future a bit. Meta AI, Facebook has a long and torrid history with us in e-commerce, if you will. Remember being able to transact on Facebook pages, and they've got this relationship with Shopify that's always been interesting. But a lot of product is sold in the Facebook network. So I'll call it Meta, and not a lot happens on Facebook, but Instagram. So imagine Instagram coming out with not only could you see this really cool thing, but an agent goes and buys it for you. That would be really cool. And I think that's going to be different. I would put, TikTok in that equation. They're on the bottom row here. And so the other kind of the sleeper in e-commerce always is the Chinese companies. I can remember when we were waiting for marketplaces to be born, suddenly we kept hearing about this Alibaba, and then Taobao, and then Tmall, and then Alipay. And then suddenly that was like 10 times bigger than anything we had in the US. And then it came to the US in a pretty major way. So Alibaba has a model called Quinn. Baidu's model is called ErnieBot, which is kind of a fun one. I think Rufus is my least favorite, and ErnieBot may be my most favorite. Kind of reminds me of Sesame Street. We need a BertBot and an ErnieBot. Tencent, there is called Hunwan. That's my best shot at that name. And then ByteDance has Doubao. They all have their own LLMs. What's different, the Chinese ones, there's a company called DeepSeek that started this. They're what's called open source, or if you want to be technical, they're really open weight. So you don't get the source code, but you do get the weights for the model, meaning you can host it yourself, which is pretty amazing. So this is the framework where we are, and we're going to keep updating this both on the podcast and then on the Retailgentic Substack. For all this to work, there has to be a payment mechanism. And this is going to be a lot of innovation in this area as well. Over on the left hand here, you can, and if you're on audio only, I'll describe this. I've got kind of two segmentations here of agentic payments. There's the ones that are launched, and then again, my predictions. So Stripe has been very active on this. They have an agent developer toolkit. This is really, if you think about it, there's 3 actors in this world. There's the agent, there's the merchant, and then there's the consumer. And this triangle of people all have to be involved in this decision. And it's an interesting framework because I think the payments that get the least friction and the fastest adoption have the lowest friction across those 3 actors. So Stripe is going out and giving agents a toolkit to build agents and giving them some payment capabilities. Stripe is very active in this area called stable coins, which is like a corner of crypto where I won't spend. I could spend like 30 minutes on this. There's an article on Retailgentic if you want to get more into that. But I think Stripe's going to kind of lean that way. And then you have the two of the credit card companies, both Visa, MasterCard, on the same day, April 29th, is kind of like a day that will live in infamy for agentic commerce, because not only did those guys announce, but PayPal and PayOS did as well. So I think Visa was launching. My understanding behind the scenes is Visa was pretty early on this, and they partner a lot with MasterCard, and they kind of just they threw their hat in the ring, and then PayPal kind of knew they needed to do something, and then there's a company that's kind of a next generation digital wallet called PayOS that we're familiar with here at RefiBuy, that launched at the same time. The you know I think it's interesting because if you go out and look at various websites and coverage, Digital Commerce 360 has an article where they look at the coverage of across the top 1,000 retailers. Visa's 99.9%, MasterCard's 99%, PayPal's like 75%, etc. Amex is like 90%, something like that. So I think they have an advantage because consumers are familiar with their mechanisms. Most consumers have one of these three cards, at least in the U.S. Number two, every merchant takes these three marks. And then number three, they've put out very nice API kits that enable the agent buyer, the agent builder, to integrate these things. Or you could work with a POS if you want to do one-to-many. We do have a bunch of payment mechanisms that are not on the board yet that I think are coming. So this is the predicted pile. Obviously, missing from that 429 announcement was one of the big three, which is Amex. And then you have this distant fourth, Discover card. We'll see where it goes. Then you have the buy now, pay later. The big three there are Affirm, Afterpay, and Klarna. And then finally, two of the digital wallets, which would be Apple Pay and Google Pay. Not clear where they are. I think Amazon Pay would always be aligned in here. Another one is Shop Pay. Maybe Shopify decides that they're going to enter this, and Shop Pay is a player in this, some kind of a Shop Pay powered agentic buying system that's supercharged for Shopify. They actually have a developer conference this week, so I'll be reporting on that if anything comes out. We're going to be using this word agent a lot, and agents have been around since ChatGPT was born, because you could just basically have a Gen AI. You could have an LLM and attach it to an API, and it could go. That was a tool, and that was called an agent. When I use the word agent, I'm talking about a post late 2024. Let's just call it a 2025 agent. And what's changed here is when you just give an agent a API and say go crazy, that is a huge problem, because they hallucinate, and they can go do. It's very dangerous to just do that. And they have very low reliability. It's like and if you ask them to do two or three things, it ends up being like 60% reliability. So it's not a good system. To mitigate that, there's a couple things people have done. So number one, they've taken the models, and then they have given them reasoning. This should be LLM. And the reasoning helps them think through steps and things of that nature. You've probably seen it with some of the reasoning models. Then what you do is you give it a database, and that database is in a vector format, and it basically takes the LLM's very broad and deep knowledge and focuses it. So it could be focused on things around certain types of products. Maybe you have a fashion retrieval augmented generation that knows everything about fashion, and that agent now really only thinks about fashion. It doesn't think about all the other stuff going on in the world. Then you give it memory, so it can remember what it did last time, and if it failed, it won't do that again. So there's an iterative learning component to this as well. Then you give it tools, and that's where the agency comes from, its ability to go do things on your behalf. These tools sometimes are called extensions. That's what they kind of call APIs that do stuff. There's two frameworks out there, MCP and A2A. Microsoft just introduced a new one called InnoLink. You can give it a browser to go poke around and do stuff. That's what ChatGPT Operator does. You can give it a little virtual machine to go do things to, and then have a browser in there. Operator does that as well, so on and so forth. So another thing I think a lot about is where are consumers in their adoption of this? And this is just like marketplaces. They're going to kind of spill through different gates to get to, I'm using this a lot, or the adoption of e-commerce. First of all, we have to have them, they have to be using Gen AI, generative AI, or LLMs a lot. So as go ChatGPT usage and so on and so forth, then some portion of that is going to spill over into commercial activity. There's non-commercial activity, which is help me with my homework. And then there's commercial activity, which is help me buy a toaster. Then from there, I like to use this research find buy metaphor. So once people get into this commercial bucket, which is I'm looking to buy something, then how many make it to the research phase, and then how many make it into the find and then the buy phase. Today, we're basically at 0 on buy, but the top part is getting big very quickly, and stuff's starting to spill over into this rapidly as well. Here's a couple data points. And again, there's a full article on this. This is from some Morgan Stanley data where they actually go out and survey. And they've done this every quarter for like 10 years. So it's really good directional survey data. It is not observed. It's basically stated preference. So there's a lot of caveats that go with that. But what you'll see in here is that the adoption of these engines is growing very, very rapidly. So the three biggies right now are ChatGPT from OpenAI, Google's Gemini. This is kind of the sleeper one. Google's very much awake right now, but they're still kind of navigating the innovator's dilemma. So it's interesting to watch. And Meta AI. Perplexity is popular amongst a certain set of really kind of bleeding edge folks like myself, but it doesn't have much popularity with consumers yet. And here you're just seeing, very, very rapid growth of all these engines. And then I like this chart because on the left, it shows how many, you can see the early days, the most when you ask people, what are you using these things for? The biggest answers used to be informational. So the number one is learn about a new topic, and they are great for that. And those usages are north of 50%. And then it used to be that was kind of it. And recipes and that type of stuff. So informational queries. But commercial activities are on the rise very rapidly. And you're starting to see articles written about this, and people are really moving a lot of their shopping behavior to the LLMs because it is a much better research experience. In fact, research new products is up to 48% now of usage, especially on Gemini. Gemini has actually pulled ahead of ChatGPT on that as a percentage, but ChatGPT has much bigger numbers. So it's kind of you always have to look at kind of both sides of this equation, the percentage, but then what's the corpus that we're multiplying that percentage times. And then you can see the next things that are really getting there are compared prices and shopped for products and planned a vacation. So we're really starting to see people pour into this funnel, but they're mostly stuck at that research phase right now. And I think Agentic is what's going to push them through as these models and these agents get smarter and better and reduce friction. It's going to be fun to watch this, and we'll keep track of this as well. So those are really the foundational elements I wanted to talk about, so that when we talk about agents, you know what I mean, so on and so forth. And which of these, when I talk about an AI shopping agent, how, what is it actually doing at the end of the day, and what's included and what isn't. Coming soon, we want to add more community features to the Substack. So if you have any ideas or requests there, we want to have some chats. We're going to be doing some, as news breaks, we want to do some live streams. We have kind of a live stream capability here that will be fun. In other communities I've built, Slack channels are popular. So that's something we could look at. The other one is Discord has kind of become popular with a certain set of folks. So let me know if that's interesting to you as well. So thanks for listening and or watching or reading. We're real excited to kick this off, and I think you're going to enjoy learning about this as much as I do. And along the way, we're going to learn a ton, and it's going to be really fun watching how fast this happens, the choices retailers and brands make, and the best practices that develop over time. You're not alone on this journey. We'll be there with you all along, and look forward to it. Thanks for joining us.
Follow, rate, and share to stay up to date with Retailgentic, your guide to the future of AI shopping agents.